Avengers Assemble. Today we are looking at the Hasbro Thor 3 3/4 inch figure line. This is Shield Bash Marvel's Odin. If that isn't the most awkward name for a figure in this line, I don't know what is. I'm not really sure what the copyright issues are that lead to them having to call this Marvel's Odin, but not having to call it Marvel's Thor or Marvel's Loki. But for some reason, Odin is copyrighted enough, I guess, that they must need to specify which Odin this is. This figure actually ended up being kind of a weird line change variant thing. When the figure line first came out, all these little gold details on the figure were silver, including these eye patch. A while after the movie had been out and all that good stuff, they switched it over to this gold version, which is movie accurate. I don't know if the factory just didn't get the note in time, or they didn't know when they were making the figure what color it was supposed to be. But for whatever reason, there are two versions of this exact same figure floating around with that minor paint variant on it. In some of the other lines, I know there's been at least one other repaint of this figure. I think it's more black with a brighter gold and gold on these same accessories as well. But it's all basically the same figure. While we do get to see Odin carrying a weapon a couple times in the movie, they're pretty brief scenes. He doesn't really do a ton with it. So I guess it was kind of hard to give him an accessory. I don't know, personally, after watching that movie, I kind of thought it would be funny if they just gave him a big pillow as an accessory. That would have kind of been nice. I actually kind of was petitioning for the Odin in pajamas variant, but, you know, maybe I'm just weird. He does come with two big, useless, stupid accessories. We have this monstrosity, which, if I thought the Sword Spike Thor sword was big, this thing's even bigger, or at least wider, and more awkward looking. There's some kind of neat detailing on it. It's kind of like chain plate over here, and there's some runes and stuff on the handle. And they did make an effort to do something with it. And then you hit this big blue button, and you can see mine doesn't snap together, right? So that already goes off, but both those pieces should fly out. So now you have a claw, I guess. I don't know. And then these unfold, so you have three knives. I don't know why you'd want to do this. First of all, these side pieces would pretty much block any chance of slashing with this weapon. And I don't know what having three sword blades is really going to achieve for you. It looks like it would just be a mess. I mean, I guess you could stab people at three different places at once? I really don't know. I don't know what they were thinking when they made this. It doesn't even really look cool. It just looks like a mess. The other accessory is the shield, for which the figure is named. It's really just a chunk of gray plastic. This is really just dismal looking. And it has some detailing on it, but just being all gray, there's nothing to bring it out at all. Not even a simple wash. You push this middle button. Ooh, the saw blade appears, and you can spin it around. This is ridiculous. It really is. I know they have to put in play features for kids, but it really just seems like they would have been better off not putting anything on this figure. Just put him in the package just as Odin. Honestly, since Odin doesn't seem to sell at all, I always would have liked to see him in a deluxe pack with his horse Sleipnir. That would have been kind of cool. Odin himself is kind of a lot like Thor. The body's kind of similar. Even the costume's kind of similar. I'm sure that's an intentional thing. But once again, it's well detailed. I'm glad I waited to get one and got the one with the gold pieces on it, because if they were silver, I think they would have really just blended in with the costume. Because it is kind of a silvery copper, if that even makes any sense. And it's kind of the brown leather pieces sticking out in between. He's got his big boots there. It's a cool costume, but not nearly as cool as the other characters in the movie. Like, even Loki's first costume looks cooler than this. This is just kind of like Thor light. He even has a very similar cape, which, just like Thor's, I have glued onto him. It's a different sculpt of cape, which is nice. They could have really easily just given us the same Thor cape over again. This one kind of hugs his body a little more. And as far as I know, Odin never takes it off in this costume, so no big deal to glue that in there. The head sculpt doesn't really look a damn thing like Anthony Hopkins. It's an old guy. He's got an eye patch on and a beard and a mullet. Not much else. I do kind of like that they got the rounded bottom, because his hairstyle was just so odd in that movie. It was kind of rounded. But they put a heavy gray wash in his hair. Some of the other characters in this line didn't even get any sense of a wash to their hair or any kind of highlights to their hair. And Odin's hair was really light and white and fluffy looking, and they really hardened it up a lot with this look. I mean, I like it for an aesthetic point, but it's not movie accurate. For articulation, he has the hinged ball head joint, which you get a good range of motion out of. The hair obviously will hinder a little bit, but they cut it in a way that he could put his head pretty far back before it gets in the way. He has the ball jointed mid-torso, pin socket shoulders, you can rotate around, rotate up, bend and swivel at the elbow, rotate the wrist, standard movie style ball pieces for the hips, which his costume doesn't inhibit, though the cape kind of is right now. Swivel the upper leg, bend the knee at 2 points, bend the ankle, and rotate. I really don't envy the person who had to design this figure. The costume, as I said before, I don't find particularly exciting. The actor's face, even though he is an iconic actor, is mostly covered in fake hair and an eye patch. And there's not really a whole lot of action things you could do with them. And for an action figure, you want a character that's gonna do something. And Odin's pretty passive as far as action scenes go. I mean, he banishes Thor, and that's really his big moment. You get a couple clips of him fighting or trying to look like a badass, but it's really more of giving you a sense that this guy could kick your butt, but you never really get to see much of it. I really question putting this figure in the first line of Thor figures. He obviously wasn't a big draw for people because this is the peg warmer of the group, or one of the two at least. And I really can't imagine that a kid's gonna stare at the collection of figures up there and be like, I want Odin. I really don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think there's that much demand for him. Actually, I know there's not that much demand for him because, as I said, he's a total peg warmer. But I don't know why they put him in Wave 1. Personally, I probably would have bumped up the Destroyer to Wave 1. Give us another enemy. Or put one of the Warriors 3 or Sif in Wave 1. They at least played more of a role in the movie as far as action goes. And while Odin is a very important part to the Thor story, he's just not as much of a character that you're going to want in plastic. Unless you're a completist on getting all the movie characters from the line, I'd say pass on him. I would not recommend picking up the Odin. Having said that, if you could find him at a discount, or if you find one at Target's, buy one, get one half off, and you need a good half off, you could do worse than this figure. He's just nothing to get really all that excited about. This has been another Outside the Box review. Stay tuned as we continue to count down to Avengers.